What was history's biggest scam? Piggyland. It's not the biggest scam but my favorite. In Toronto in the 40-50s, a guy, I can't remember his name, came up with a great investment idea. He would sell people piglets but also charge extra up front for their food, care etc. He would take care of their pig on his farm, and when it was full grown, the investor would sell it for a nice profit. He sold thousands of piglets. People would even bring their kids up to the farm on the weekends to visit, and the parents would be happy to see their investments growing. They weren't allowed in the barn, but he had a nice meeting room set up where they could play with their pig. Then one day the owner took off to Germany with millions of investors' dollars and was never heard from again. It turns out he only had a dozen or so pigs in different sizes. When people came to visit, they all saw the same few pigs. There was a scammer who sold the Eiffel Tower twice. Scientology, which I'm actually glad to see not having already been mentioned here yet, as that's an indicator of it fading into rightful obscurity. Surprised no one has mentioned H. Holmes, creator of the haunted house as we know it. He would offer you a hotel room while you visit the Chicago World's Fair, and when you get to your room he gasses you and throws your body down a chute to his basement. Then he would burn the meat off your skeleton in his acid pit so he could sell your skeleton to the nearby college. Probably the biggest scam I know of. Man, haunted houses have changed since I was a kid. Those athletic silicone bracelets a couple years ago that said they improved your balance or whatever. Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. The largest Ponzi scheme in world history. And the largest financial fraud in U.S. The largest financial fraud in U.S. history. You mean the largest known financial fraud in U.S. history. Ink cartridges. Not sure if this counts, but it's pretty interesting. In ancient Rome the fire service was private, so to speak. And the main company putting out fires would only do so if they bought the house from the owner at a pittance of what it's worth. Obviously many would do that or else become homeless. And the owner of the firefighting company became a very rich man. However, there were lots of rumors of buildings of interest to the company being set on fire on purpose. Or indeed if it was a slow month business wise. Just start a fire. When South America was discovered, through the Pacific mainly, Spain and Portugal were to draw a border to determine what each of them would own. Spain had the upper hand at the time. Portugal only requested land at the east of a certain parallel, can't remember which. And Spain gladly accepted. A few months later, Brazil was discovered by chance, giving the Portuguese huge amount of land in the New World. Edit. Row. So that's my most upvoted comment yet. And not only is it very blurry, as I didn't have enough internet connection to verify my information when I wrote it. It is even wrong. Thank you everyone for pointing out my many mistakes on the Treaty of Tordesillas. Diamonds are pretty scammy. You know what? When the son of the deposed king of Nigeria emails you directly, asking for help, you help. His father ran the freaking country. Okay. Has anybody said the wooden horse filled with grease warriors? Public funded stadiums. Dealing with that right now in Vegas. Taxpayers are providing 50% of the $1.5 billion Raiders stadium under construction right now. The school district is last in the country. Teachers often working for free and massive overcrowding, but apparently there's an extra $750 million to help the struggling NFL. Insurance. I have freaking volcano and riot coverage but not vandalism or theft. The guy that said vaccines cause autism so he could sell his own vaccines. Tell me and be honest. It's okay. I won't be mad. Pyramid schemes. Darn those Egyptians to heck. Pharaoh. Okay. So you're gonna spend your entire life hauling heavy ass blocks of stone from quarries miles away from the construction site on top of each other until they form a giant 3-dimensional triangle. It'll be in the sweltering heat of the desert. And you'll probably die building it. Peasant. So, what's in it for me? Pharaoh. You get some booze. Beef jerky. And when you die you get to be buried in the sand beside it. Peasant. I'm in. Edit. Yes. I realized they were actually skilled workers. The joke just worked better this way. Herbalife is a straight up pyramid scheme. Y2K survival kits. Life coach. I have a friend whose life has been a disaster. Had her kid taken away by the state. Went bankrupt twice. 2 failed marriages. Who is a certified life coach. It costs $5,000 to join. What a scam. Marcus Licinius Crassus, quite possibly the wealthiest man to have ever lived, got a lot of that wealth through shady means. He lived around 100 BC in Rome and is credited with inventing the first fire brigade. Except this fire brigade didn't work like any today. In ancient Rome there was no fire department. So Crassus would show up to a fire with a lot of slaves he used to put out fires. Then he'd watch your house burn and tell you he'll buy it from you at some crazy low price. It'd go something like this. I know they did not use dollars. Just an example. Crassus. Whoa. Your house is on fire. Tell you what. I'll buy it from you for $1,000. Joe Citizen. What? It's worth $10. 000 at least. Crassus. Yeah. But it is on fire and it is getting worse. How about $900? Joe Citizen. I can't possibly accept such a low price. I'll have nothing. Crassus. If this fire keeps going you really won't have anything soon enough. Now the offer is $800. Joe Citizen. Fine. I'll take $800. Crassus. Deal. Fire brigade. Go put that fire out. In time he became the biggest landowner in Rome. Indulgences in the Catholic Church. Hands down. That's bull. This is bull. This whole thing's a scam. F the church. Here's 95 reasons why. Theranos had a good crack at being the biggest scam in recent memory. Rick Harrison's pawn shop. Rick be like. So we have confirmed this is an authentic 1400s Tachi owned by the son-in-law of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. The blade has been excellently maintained and is very finely forged. The guard is actually taken from an even older sword. This sword was even the personal property of a Japanese officer in 1905 Russo-Japanese War. Captured by Russian forces. Then captured by your great-grandfather during the American intervention in Arkhangelsk in 1918. And has since been passed on to you. Just the sword itself is priceless. But comparable modern-made swords run easily $30,000. Add in all that history and it could fetch 6 figures. I'll give you $400 for it. There was an architect in Texas who was given money to build a skyscraper. When he showed the blueprints to the investors, everyone signed off on it. But they made it in inches, not feet. So he built a really small building and kept the difference of the costs. The investors sued him. But the judge said it was perfectly legal because he built what he showed them. And it wasn't his fault they didn't bother looking closer. It is now called the world's littlest skyscraper. The price of college textbooks. You're already spending so much for an education and they want you to shell out hundreds of dollars on textbooks. There was a guy in like the 1500s that sold off a Central American country that didn't exist. It works. Mom saying I won't be mad if you confess. This hotel's Wi-Fi. South Sea Bubble. Reddit gold. I'm waiting for an arsehole to give you gold. Because I know it's gonna happen. The original Ponzi scheme has to be high on the list. Some dudes bought a diamond necklace through a prostitute impersonating Marie Antoinette. The necklace was valued to some $20 million in the 18th century, and did the good old give us the necklace first and we pay you later. Which they obviously didn't and instead fled the country in the jewelers. Some of the most well known in all of France at the time went bankrupt. Edit. This blonde fella promised a nation they'd get £350 million a week and could use it to fund their health service if they all voted to leave. I'd say the corporation is the biggest scam. They have personhood. So they can own property. They are protected by national armies and navies, the East India Company. They can't go to jail. They are rarely broken up. They don't die. And they influence politics. You mention all that. And you forget to mention limited liability, which is fundamental to removing risk for capital owners and socializing losses from bankruptcy to society. Religion is far and away the biggest, most effective scam in history. To quote George Carlin, think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do, every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place, full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you. He loves you and he needs money. Trickle-down economics. That the war on drugs was in any way the government's attempt to protect citizens. The 1985 NBA draft. Homeopathy. War. Did you know the original title for War and Peace was War? What is it good for? His mistress didn't like the title and insisted him change it to War and Peace. What's it good for? The tulip scam was a pretty big thing. It was compared to Bitcoin late 2017. Semicolon. People just can't recognize bubbles for some reason. Everyone always thinks that they're not gonna go bust. That they'll find the next big buyer. Someone has to hold the bag when it pops. Car and petroleum and real estate companies convincing governments to pay for roads and spread out cities instead of supporting mass, public, and alternative transportation. MLMS. RTX 2080 Ti. That it is the average person that is at fault for the state of the environment. Don't get me wrong. The public at large has of course played a role. But we are nothing compared to corporations. You biking to work is great, but it means nothing while giant ships are belching some of the nastiest kinds of greenhouse gases out completely unregulated. And recycling is great, but we are still destroying all of the world's carbon sinks at an unprecedented rate. And that is the tip of the melting iceberg. Semicolon. Followed closely by the U.S. Politicians convincing large swaths of the public that the wealthy should be taxed less than the middle class. That one is a doozy. John Spano buying the NY Islanders is a classic. Not the biggest though. The mortgage scam of 08. Regular homeowners saw their home values drop 20 to 40%. I'm no economist. But that had to be one of the largest decline in net worth for millions of Americans. It came back 4 years later. It wasn't a scam, it was just horrible mismanagement and speculation. Sure, some folks were scammers. But not all bad policies are scams. The Rothschild family had a series of messenger pigeons set up across Europe. When Napoleon's army fell at the Battle of Waterloo, they heard the news first. Then spread a rumor in London that Napoleon was victorious, causing many people to fear an economic collapse and sell all their holdings and shares. They then bought up everything they could at a fraction of its value before the real news could reach the city. Edit. I don't remember my source. Just remember reading that. Doesn't seem too far-fetched considering scams bankers pull off to this day. But there is also plenty of reason to believe this story could have been spread as anti-Semitic propaganda. I hold no strong opinion about this topic. The story just came to mind when I read the question from OP. Mormonism. Convicted fraud cons people into believing God told him to marry other men's wives. Bottled water. Have you been to places like Mexico or Thailand where bottled water is a necessity? Elaborate please, because when natural disasters happen or places like Flint have non-potable water, how else are we to transport store it for individual consumption? Penny stocks, real life Wolf of Wall Street. They aren't scams. You just gotta treat them as what they are. Gambling. More so than the stock market usually is. They're really for rich people who have far more money than the average person to throw around. They're really cheap so you can buy a ton. So say you buy 300,000 shares of a stock that's $03 a piece. $1,000 spent. That price goes up just 3 cents. You double your money. If the price falls even slightly, it's a total loss. They're sold as a get rich quick scheme. The thing is that if you're public and your stock is that low, odds are you're about to die. Indulgences. This is bull. That's a scam. The church. Here's 95 reasons why. British telling Indians that they would be given freedom after the First World War. Greenland. I'm not naming names, but I think that they are currently making the worst trade deals in the history of trade deals. Student loans. That fat is worse for you, sugar. Thanks, sugar industry. Laws. We are expected to adhere strictly to the law. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. And yet as a commoner, I can't just look up laws. Building codes are a great example of this. A copy of the local building codes would cost me like $1,600. In this great information age, every single law should be indexed on the internet and available for any person to read. There should also be a plain text footer at the end of each law that translates any questionable legal language into something that can be understood by the average grade 12 high school student. The International Monetary Fund will get your nation on its feet, so we can bend it over and more comfortably pay it in the ass. Vaccines causing autism. Connie 2012. The guy running the whole thing had a mental breakdown a few weeks after it became popular. Got naked and ran around the streets. He was medically detained.